Well, I'm sure you weren't expecting me at the beginning of this video. Well, there's a simple explanation for it. I told my grandmother that this video that I took of my interview with her was going to be purely a resource, not something that I would actually use and submit for the assignment. I told her that I would take this video and only pull direct quotes from it. Well, I lied a little bit, because she wouldn't have agreed to do the video any other way. So, because of that, some really key information was left out. Like her name. Her full name is Carolyn Sue Witt Harold. She was born in Corbin, Kentucky on July 27th, 1941. She was born into a small house where her mother and her father had her and then 2 boys afterwards. So, some quick explanations. I just said her and her 2 brothers. So, if this will focus, there we go. This down here, that's my Susie. If you can see up close, see what I can do on the camera. There we go. That's my Susie, when she was roughly my age. Now this, you'll see right here, this is my Uncle Doc, which she will call Davy, because his name is David. I know his name is Uncle Doc to me because that's what my mom always called him. And plus he was a dentist, so he was a doctor. And this is my Uncle Denny, great Uncle Denny. My great Uncle Denny is the baby of the 5 of them, and they all lived in a small house in Corbin. Speaking of the small house in Corbin, I mentioned her parents, which would be my great-grandparents. Now, something interesting about my great-grandparents that not a lot of people can say is that I actually got to meet one of my great-grandparents. I got to meet my mamaw. And this is my mamaw here. This picture is only about 10 years old. But this is a picture of my mamaw. Now, I grew up knowing my mamaw because she died in 2018. Which means for 16 of my 18 years on this earth, I've known my mamaw. Another person you'll hear her talk about is my papaw. This is his picture when he was in the military back during the war. So you hear Susie talk a lot about all of these people. And so just having some context of who they are and what they are to her and what they are to me can better help you understand what's going on in this video. So, I will shut up and quit yapping, and this is my interview with my Susie. Hope you enjoy. So, I'm just going to read you what the assignment itself is. The second assignment will be an interview of someone born before or close to 1950, and discuss with them dating customs, like relationships, and practices, and life in general when they were a teenager.
Boring.
This analysis should describe conditions for that generation and contrast it with my own. The emphasis of the piece should be on the changes in socialization, economic factors, effects of technology, differences in gender roles, etc.
But also has a lot to do with your family traditions and
Right, so
phobias.
Right, so what would be some family traditions that you had with Mama and Papa that we would not think of nowadays? Like, that would be different?
Well, growing up in a small town, we walked everywhere. So, the only time we went anywhere in a car was usually to the drive-in.
Right.
I don't remember that we had any real family traditions. In my family, Christmas, we always went to Mama and Papa's steps, Christmas Eve. Took their presents to them, watched Papa open his, because he got such a kick out of it. Uh, my daddy didn't care anything at all about Christmas. He'd take his Christmas presents and put them on a cedar chest, and they'd stay there for a month until Mama opened them and gave them to him. Because he couldn't care less.
So, like, what would a Christmas present look like to you?
Well, one, there were only 3 or 4.
Right.
You didn't have the tree full because nobody had any money to buy all those Christmas presents. I can remember a few of my Christmas presents when I was smaller, maybe. One was a Dale Evans cowgirl outfit. But I didn't like Dale Evans because she was married to Roy Rogers, and I wanted to be married to Roy Rogers. Boy, I can't remember any other. My grandmother gave me some of those nails that are twisted so that they make puzzles. I think I gave you one one year, which you didn't care anything about. Daddy's sister-in-law always made candy. She'd make a dozen different kinds of candy and fill up a big platter and give to, well, Daddy was just one of 2, so she'd give that to us as our Christmas present. And my mother didn't think that she was very clean, so the candy went in the trash. And we kids were totally upset because we didn't get to eat it.
I'd be mad at Mom for that one.
Yeah, I know. My mother threw out a lot of food because she had had food poisoning or something when she was young that almost killed her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very careful with food, and she would open a can of food and like a can of corn or a can of peas and smell of it, and if she didn't like the way it smelled, she threw it in the trash. I made a comment to Daddy once about all the money that Mama was wasting, and he said, but we never get sick, so I guess he just put up with it. She was really careful with food. And then later on, as she got older, she didn't seem to bother her a bit to go out and eat at restaurants where she had no idea how they were handling her food or where it came from.
I guess the FDA got better about that. Ish.
Some of it, yeah. I'm sure a lot of regulations. We kids, small town, you didn't have to worry about abductions and abuse and stuff like that. And in the summer, we played outside all day long. I'd go home for lunch, which was really our big meal. And then after lunch, I would help with the dishes and then go back out and play. And we played all over the neighborhood. Nobody ever questioned where we were unless we didn't show up for supper. We didn't have to worry about anything. In the winter, we had a couple of big hills if it snowed where we'd go sleigh riding. Didn't have to worry about traffic.
Right.
So we could ride on the streets. We'd get out, we'd play till dark in the summer, then go in and clean up, go to bed.
So when you were my age, what would be some things that you would do for fun?
your age. We had a youth center
Okay.
that was open after all the ball games, and we would go to the youth center and stay. The ball games would usually be over around 9:30, maybe,
Mhm.
and then we would go to the youth center and stay till 11. That's the only time. Most of the time, I had to be in the house by 9:30, and in bed by 9:30. So the youth center was open on Saturday and maybe a couple of other nights a week that we could go to dance. We had jukebox. They had pool tables. I think they had ping pong tables, and that's where we could meet. And the woman who was in charge of the youth center, Princess McBurney, was great, and all the kids loved her, and she kept a tight ship. You know, she kept everybody in. And one of her brothers was a cop, so she wouldn't have to go far to get somebody if she needed. But
So what did Mama and Papa do, like career-wise? I know Mama would stay at home. I can't remember what Papa did.
well, Mama stayed home until Denny started school, and then she started working at Belk's. And after she had worked at Belk's, she started first part-time, and then as he got older, she went to full-time, and then she went to a jewelry store to work. And her boss, Terry, died of Lou Gehrig's disease. And then his wife, who also helped run the jewelry store, remarried, and she married a man who lived in Pennsylvania. So they put Mama in charge of the jewelry store. They didn't give her a raise for being in charge, but she was in charge of the jewelry store until she retired. Daddy was an electrician and motor winder, and he had his embalmer's license and funeral director's license, which he did part-time if the funeral home needed him.
Gotcha.
I still have his certificates and things. One of them's I had to put it on the floor and stand above it, take a picture of it to put it on the computer. It's a big old thing. He never ever got it out, didn't hang it anywhere, frame it or anything. I asked him once why he didn't stay in the funeral directing business, because that's what he did before he went into service for World War II.
Mhm.
I kind of suspect that he had PTSD, which wasn't heard of then, because he worked in the hospitals and saw a lot of casualty. But he said that he didn't like the idea that people would spend all the money they had on a funeral when they needed the money to live. But I suspect that that's just part of the reason. But he was I also probably think that he was put into the medical units because he had the chemistry and the embalming and chemistry and stuff for being a funeral director and embalmer. I think he'd probably seen enough of death that he just really didn't want to.
Couldn't stand the thought of it.
For a living. Although that's not what he said.
Gotcha.
Well, in some ways, Daddy was the boss, and in other ways, Mama was the boss. Mama handled the money. I handled the money. I don't know, Alyssa handles the money.
Yeah, don't want to trust Dad with the money.
Mama was the mathematician. I was the mathematician. Alyssa's the mathematician.
Yes.
Mama never spanked us. Well, she spanked me once with a switch. She always just threatened us with Daddy. I was the disciplinarian for Alyssa. That's why she's such a mean little thing. She was a mean little thing. She got better as she got older.
But it took a little bit.
Yeah. But Daddy was the kind, if he told you once, that was it. You got one warning and that was it. Next time was not a warning. And you, after the first time, you learn that.
Mm-hmm.
So when he tells you to do something, you do it. You don't beg and plead and try to get your way.
But he wasn't
it's
loud
not
and obnoxious or anything like that. Like, I like the story of you talking about Denny running away at one time, and then Uncle Doc possibly setting fire to something. Those are two of my favorite stories. This was how Papa disciplined.
Yeah. With Denny, I don't know what he'd done, and Mom was like, "Well, your daddy gets home, I'm going to tell your daddy when he comes home." And when Daddy came home, Denny ran away. And Daddy just said, "Oh, he'll have to come home eventually." Instead of trying to find him to punish him, it was like, "Oh, he'll have to be here anyway." I only remember that he spanked me once. I was about 4, and I spilled mercurochrome on Mama's dresser scarf.
Uh-huh.
And it's the kind of stuff that wouldn't come out, wouldn't wash out. And he spanked me with a hairbrush. So I learned what that was like. And we didn't have fast food.
Mm. So, like, when was, like, the first time, like, you had been to McDonald's or something?
First time I ever went to, and I think it was a McDonald's, I had gone to Louisville to go to the dermatologist, and I was living with Jeanette and WD for about 3 weeks, and they took me to a McDonald's. Hamburgers were 15 cents.
That's something.
So, that's the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it answered all the questions that you needed us to answer in our project. This isn't the entire interview because the entire interview would be roughly an hour long. That's how long this interview was. So I've shortened it a bit. But I want to thank you for this school year and making the best out of the situation that we were in. You know, in regards to our classes, Revel, of course, Revel, the infamous Revel, and just everything throughout the year. And the biggest thing is this project. I will say that after this project, I want to go and record all of my grandparents and listen to their stories and have them on camera, just so that when I'm a grandfather, way down the line, I can go back and play some of these videos for my kids and my grandkids. So, thank you. This year has been fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Adios.